In the shadow of the Middle East, where every decision is a chess move with profound global consequences, Israel stands at a dangerous crossroads. The stakes are existential. Strike Iran, or let a ticking nuclear clock run down until it's too late. The world watches, but only a few understand the real question on the table. It's not just about Iran's nuclear ambitions, it's about the fragile equilibrium between life and death, war and peace. In late 2025 and early 26, political leaders in Tel Aviv and Washington send clear signals the option of military strikes against Iran is not just on the table, but it's being actively discussed again. With Iran rebuilding key defense systems and nuclear transparency in dispute, Israel is caught in a perilous dance. The clock is ticking, but the right move remains unclear. The question is, will Israel act in time? As tensions rise, the heart of the matter lies in the uncertainty surrounding Iran's nuclear capabilities. What's at stake isn't just Israel's security, it's the global order itself. Iran's nuclear ambitions are no secret. What is secret, however, is the true extent of its progress. Despite ongoing strikes and sabotage, Iran still holds vast stockpiles of enriched uranium and key capabilities that can be concealed, rebuilt, or weaponized at a moment's notice. This uncertainty is a ticking time bomb, one that Israel and the world can no longer ignore. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, reports gaps in its ability to monitor Iran's nuclear activities, and the clock is ticking. What's not immediately clear is the size of Iran's nuclear infrastructure or how close they are to making their final push for weaponization. The ambiguity in Iran's program creates a deadly strategic dilemma. Is Israel acting on incomplete information, or are they waiting for the inevitable breakthrough? In the face of this uncertainty, Israel's strategy must be threshold-based. If Iran crosses a certain line, strikes become inevitable. But where is that line, and when will it be crossed? As the world watches, every move could tilt the scales towards war. With the nuclear question hanging over Israel's decision, it's not just about deterrence, it's about survival. The real question is whether Israel has time to wait or must act before it's too late. To understand Israel's predicament, we must look back at the history of this conflict, a cycle of tension, confrontation, and uncertainty. Since 2024, Israel and Iran have crossed key thresholds. Iran has launched unprecedented direct attacks on Israeli targets, while Israel has struck Iranian assets, targeting both military and strategic nuclear sites. Each attack, each countermeasure deepens the divide and feeds the escalating spiral. At its core, this conflict is driven by a mechanism of mutual deterrence. Israel's strikes are not meant to obliterate Iran, but to disrupt its progress towards nuclear weapons, delaying the inevitable. However, these strikes have only disrupted Iran's program, not dismantled it. This ambiguity feeds into Israel's logic. Every delay may be just that, an obstacle temporarily in place, not a permanent setback. The question becomes whether these strikes are truly enough, or whether Israel is simply buying time that is running out quickly. As each round of attacks passes, the cycle grows more dangerous, and the line between deterrence and escalation grows ever thinner. The core of the problem lies in this: Israel can't afford to wait for Iran to close the gap. They must decide whether to disrupt or dismantle the threat once and for all. In the summer of 2025, the world was on edge as Israel launched what seemed like a routine strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. But behind closed doors, the operation was far more significant. Israeli intelligence had uncovered new evidence that Iran was on the verge of reconstituting key air defense systems around critical nuclear sites, an action that would make any future strikes far more difficult to execute. The attack was swift, precise, and impactful, but it was also a warning shot, one that Israel hoped would prevent Iran from crossing a red line. And yet Tehran's response was calculated. Rather than escalating, Iran moved quickly to reinforce its defenses and conceal sensitive nuclear materials. This first mini-crisis illustrated the high stakes. Israel's military reached its targets, but Iran's ability to recover and adapt in real time made it clear that the conflict was far from over. For Israel, this moment was a reminder that time was running out. The next step could be even riskier. But the real question now becomes whether the first strike truly disrupted Iran's plans or merely delayed them. The second crisis looms, and it will test Israel's resolve even further. What lies beneath the surface of this crisis is a complex system of mechanisms driving both Israel's and Iran's actions. Israel's strikes are not simply about preventing nuclear weapons, they are a means of disrupting Iran's entire strategic ecosystem, which includes missile defense, air defense, and the ability to rapidly regenerate these capabilities. The real question is not just how much damage Israel can inflict, but how quickly Iran can rebuild its offensive and defensive systems after each attack. Israel's strategy hinges on a delicate balance. How much can they disrupt without pushing Iran into a corner, triggering a broader regional conflict? The key to Israeli strategy is not just preemption, but the timing of that preemption. They must strike when Iran's defenses are weakened, but before Iran can adapt and strengthen its response. The challenge lies in the uncertainty. Israel can't be sure exactly when or how Iran will rebuild its systems, but they must act before that process reaches a critical point of no return. In this high-stakes game, Israel faces a terrible truth. Every strike is a temporary fix, and the next one might be even harder to carry out. As Israel prepares for the next phase, the balance of power continues to shift. What happens next will depend on how quickly Iran can adapt and how much risk Israel is willing to accept. As 2026 dawns, Israel's window for action narrows. A second mini-crisis erupts when Iranian-backed proxies launch a major attack on Israeli interests in Syria, killing several Israeli citizens. This isn't just another skirmish, it's a direct provocation, a signal that Iran is willing to escalate its involvement through surrogates. The attack comes at a moment when Israel's leadership is already under intense pressure, both from domestic politics and the broader international community, to act decisively. In response, Israel launches a swift, forceful retaliation, but the damage done is more than just physical. It's a turning point. The military balance is shifting again, Iran's proxies are pushing harder, and Israel's political leaders are faced with the undeniable reality that their restraint may no longer be an option. This escalation leaves no room for doubt. A major conflict may be just one misstep away. With the region already unstable, the probability of miscalculation rises. One accidental strike could trigger a full-scale war. For Israel, this event underscores a painful truth. Each attack moves the region closer to an all-out confrontation. As the situation escalates, Israel faces a choice: respond in kind and risk total war, or de-escalate and leave the nuclear question unresolved. At the heart of this crisis lies the impact on ordinary people. For Israelis, the fear of a regional war is palpable. Air raid sirens, missile defense systems, and the constant threat of retaliation weigh heavily on the daily lives of citizens. The economy too feels the strain. Businesses falter as security measures intensify and military readiness drains national resources. But Iran too feels the consequences. Sanctions, internal unrest, and the constant pressure of international scrutiny weigh heavily on the Iranian populace. The leadership, once confident in its ability to manage both external and internal challenges, now faces growing dissatisfaction at home. Protests flare, fueled by economic hardship and frustrations with the regime's foreign policy. For the people, both sides are trapped in a cycle of fear and uncertainty, with the potential for violence always looming. In this high-stakes game of geopolitics, the ones who suffer the most are the civilians caught in the middle. The cost of inaction, as much as the cost of escalation, is paid by the people caught in a struggle they did not choose. We must ask ourselves, can diplomacy save lives, or are we destined for a conflict that could change the world forever? As we shift focus to the global implications, we begin to see how this conflict extends far beyond the Middle East. The ramifications of an Israel-Iran conflict would ripple far beyond the Middle East. Already the shadow of this confrontation looms over global energy markets. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil shipments, could quickly become a flashpoint. Iran's asymmetric control over this strategic choke point means any disruption could send shockwaves through the global economy. If the conflict escalates, oil prices could soar, supply chains could be disrupted, and economies already teetering on the edge of recession could be pushed into full-blown crisis. But the geopolitical repercussions don't end there. Russia, already deeply involved in the region, has stakes in preventing an Israeli strike, knowing that such an escalation could further destabilize its own sphere of influence, particularly in Syria. China, which depends on Middle Eastern oil for its vast economy, would watch with growing concern. And the United States, while diplomatically seeking to avoid a full-scale war, could find itself drawn into a broader conflict, forcing it to navigate alliances and rivalries with a delicate hand. The entire global order stands on the edge of a knife, and the decision made in Tel Aviv could shift the balance of power across continents. As we look to the future, the most pressing question remains: what will the next chapter hold for Israel, Iran, and the world? As we peer into the future, three potential scenarios emerge from this volatile situation. The best-case scenario: diplomatic efforts succeed. The international community, led by the United States and key European partners, successfully brokers a renewed agreement with Iran that halts its nuclear ambitions. The IAEA gains full access to Iranian facilities and transparency is restored. This outcome, while unlikely, would prevent the catastrophic fallout of military escalation, preserving regional stability and global markets. The middle ground scenario: a limited military strike from Israel, focused on disabling key Iranian assets, leads to a fragile ceasefire. Israel pushes Iran back temporarily, but the nuclear program remains intact, and both nations continue to edge closer to a more destructive confrontation. Diplomatic efforts continue, but the threat of war remains a constant. The worst-case scenario: a full-scale military confrontation breaks out, drawing in multiple regional players. The war destabilizes the Middle East, cripples global energy markets, and escalates into a broader international conflict. Israel and Iran both suffer immense casualties, and the global economy faces severe disruptions. The dream of peace evaporates in the flames of war. In the end, the outcome will depend on the choices made now. The world stands at a crossroads, with every decision shaping the future. No matter the path, the consequences will be profound. The road ahead is fraught with peril, but it is not without hope. As the clock ticks down, Israel faces a decision that will shape the future of the region and the world. The price of action is steep: military strikes, retaliatory attacks, global economic instability, and the lives of countless civilians caught in the crossfire. But the price of inaction may be even higher. If Israel allows Iran's nuclear program to progress unchecked, it risks not only the security of its own people, but the fragile stability of the entire Middle East. The key to understanding Israel's position lies in the constant tension between urgency and restraint. Every delay gives Iran more time to strengthen its defenses, conceal its assets, and perfect its weaponry. But each strike carries the risk of escalation, of triggering a war that cannot be controlled. Israel's decision will not be made in a vacuum. It will be shaped by the pressures of domestic politics, the calculations of international allies, and the broader regional dynamics. In the end, the question is not just whether Israel will strike, but whether it can strike at the right time, with the right force, and with the right strategy to avert a catastrophic war.